Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of the Guitarist Corner. Today we have in the house, we got Chris Canzoneri, we got Butch Jones, we got Guitar Hack, and Jim Bacchi. So today we're going to kind of take a look at some of our favorite guitar tones, specific players that we really dig their tone. And that could be across, multiple albums, maybe their live tone, a combination, all the above. And we're also going to talk about the 5 players that we just don't like their tone at all. We could love the player, but, there's a lot of great players across the history of music who technically they're amazing. You love the way they play, but you're just like, but that tone sucks. So we're going to kind of go both routes tonight. So we're going to go Butch, Chris, Hack, Jim, and myself. And first we'll go through everybody's least favorite tones, and then we'll circle back around and we'll go favorite tones. So Butch, who's your stinker pile here tonight?
Well, I'm going to throw a kind of a blanket one. And I'll call out one person in particular, but I'll start with any band that's a grunge band from the 90s. All their tones are awful. I don't know if it was to be ironic or what, not good, but if I got to pick out one, I'll pick out Billy Corrigan from the Smashing Pumpkins. Awful guitar tone. Oh, just sorry. Yeah. I'm gonna ruffle some feathers with this one, but it's only one record. So even though we were talking about it a little before we came on the air here, one guitar tone from someone that I love. He only did technically 2 albums with, well, I guess maybe 3, including a live album. Randy Rhodes. So that's what I'm talking about. Randy Rhodes' tone on Blizzard of Oz is not good. I don't know anyone that's ever said, "Hey, I'm trying to get the Randy Rhodes tone from Blizzard of Oz." It sounds like a pig nose running on a train. I don't know. His playing is phenomenal, beyond brilliant, but I can't stand the tone of that album. His tone is terrible. Playing's phenomenal. I hate the tone. I was going to mention Jack White, but that's too easy. But I'll go with Kirk Hammett from Metallica. James Hetfield, I guess, pretty much plays all the rhythms, and that's why the rhythm tone has always been really good. But Kirk Hammett from Kill 'Em All the way through has a terrible lead guitar tone. It is the thinnest tone ever. The wah-wah is a whole nother show. I can't stand his tone at all, not to mention his phrasing, but I hate the nasal tinny tone that he's always had. So that would be my third. Here's another one that I don't get. They made an amp based on his tone. I don't get it. Slash. I don't dislike him as a player at all, but I don't get his tone either. To me, that's in that Randy Rhodes kind of tone, the kind of pig nose, just sounding like it sounds transistor-like to me. I've never understood why Marshall would go and make an amp. Well, I guess I do, because it says Slash on it and kids are going to buy it. So
right
for marketing, right? Great marketing. But number one is a world-class guitar player. And we kind of mentioned this. I think we mentioned his name closing on the last episode, but I don't think it aired, so people didn't hear us talking about it. But Steve Howe from Yes. How a guitar player could be so brilliant and have the worst guitar tone for over 50 years, except for Drama. I think a guitar tone on Drama.
It sounds great on Drama. Yes,
right?
It does. Yep.
He kicked on the gas. It's like finally someone said, "Hey, Steve, they make distortion pedals now. You can kind of fill up your tone a little bit." Oh, brilliant player. Steve Howe is definitely I can't stand his tone. But I do love him.
Yeah.
Not the first person I've heard say that.
And he won't be the last tonight.
Not even close.
Uh-oh.
Chris, what do you got?
All right. This was tough. I said it before. All guitar tones are valid. in the right context. But I had to go with some blankets, and I did single a few people out, and I even named one album that I think is pretty shitty. But I'm going to start with a guy who I think is one of the most unbelievable players ever. Great blues man, Roy Buchanan. Guy's incredible. Something about that ice picky Telecaster thing he had going on, just, I can't take it. I mean, I love listening to the guy in small doses, but that just, it goes right into my brain. Maybe it's just me. I mean, I know everybody loves this guy, but his tone for me just doesn't do it. Second, I went with Alex Lyston, like during the Grace Under Pressure times. You know, this is a guy who found the chorus pedal and cranked it all the way up, and his balls fell off when he did that.
He found GK. That was the problem.
Yeah, geez.
Well, that and single coils, yeah.
But boy, he changed a lot, and he made me angry when he did it. Not my favorite. Okay, third, I went with Motley Crue, specifically on the Theater of Pain album, which the whole thing sounds like it was recorded in a tunnel or like, under an overpass. There's just this echoey, weird, strange tone to the guitars. The whole album, really.
Of course.
But, just unpleasant. Songs suck too. Number 4, this is a blanket one. Pretty much any 80s era acoustic guitar made by Ovation that was amplified in a live setting, except for Emily Remler, who didn't try to sound, make it sound like an acoustic guitar, went for her own thing. She sounded great. Everybody else, it sounds like
like plastic.
It's like a nylon string guitar stuffed with socks or something. So, and whenever I hear that stuff, I run. And number 5, I went with later period Mark Bolan. Anything from like, I don't know, trying to remember the name here, Zip Gun or Tanks. Tanks was actually good. But, early T-Rex was like these were all the cool things you can do with a fuzz pedal. And then the later albums are like, here's the stuff that you should never, ever do with a fuzz pedal. Just thin, nasty sounding, because he was so great in the beginning. I love those first few T-Rex albums. And then it just sort of went bad. So that's my 5. I don't like being negative, but that's what you asked me to do.
There you go. So, every now and then we got to be a little negative, I think.
I guess so.
Yeah. All right, Hack.
Well, this one was already mentioned, but Randy Rhodes, Blizzard of Oz. I mean, amazing record, great songs, great playing, but oh my God, there's just no fatness to that. A guitar is just so thin. It's so, I don't know. It just, when he went to the solos, it sounded fine, but the rhythm parts were just really, really bad. That's my number 5. For number 4, I got to do a Kiss one. Paul and Mark on Animalize. It's that was the time of 80s super compressed, sounds. I mean, there's no definition. Everything is all blocky sounding, even the lead sounded bad on that. It's one of my favorite albums, but yeah, the tone is shit. I gotta go. This guy's gonna appear a couple of times, but Billy Gibbons on the Afterburner.
Okay.
All right. Well, yeah, I was gonna say.
Woo! I know. Everybody,
I'm out.
But it's that whole 80s disease, right? It's that 80s disease. Let's throw a bunch of chorus on this. Let's compress the shit out of it. Let's make the guitar not sound like a guitar. I get that it was part of the vibe of the album, but it's just shit.
I'm with you. I understand.
So yeah. And another one that was mentioned, you mentioned Metallica, you mentioned Kirk Hammett specifically, but the whole guitar tone all across Injustice for All.
No.
It's garbage.
That's my favorite tone of Metallica right there.
Mine too.
Man. Really?
Yeah, I like that album. I think I like the.
Oh, I love the record. I wish the songs had some balls. I mean, there's no bottom there. It's just, oh my
I
god,
There's
love
no
that
bass.
it sounds like
There's no
AM.
bass on that album
It sounds like AM radio, man. It's just
because there's no bass guitar.
yeah. Well,
Bass
there's
guitar is mixed completely out of the mix. So
I just no, didn't work. And I absolutely love this record, and I love this guy. He's amazing. But Dimebag Darrell, Cowboys from Hell, holy shit! Talk about thin and tinny and piercing and just, you're talking about Ry Cooder, same kind of idea. Just
hello. Hello. Oh, I gotta go, guys. I'm just.
That.
Oh.
I wish they did. The Far Beyond Driven, and that was a great. I wish they had some of that thickness and fatness of tone on that record. I love the record. I mean, but man, would that record sound a lot better if that guitar had a little bit of bottom or some mids, something other than that super tinny. But yeah, those are my 5.
All righty. Jim.
okay, well, being that I misunderstood the assignment a little bit, I went albums. So because some of these bands, most of these bands I like and have great guitar sounds on some albums and awful ones on the others. So I apologize for getting this wrong.
That's cool too. It adds a little variety here. So that's
okay. Right. So I went worst, and I have a runner-up, which I will say as well for the worst. Number 5, I'm going to go with Living Color Vivid.
I almost picked Burn.
Because that is a god-awful guitar sound. And on an album I absolutely love. It's just so saturated and processed, and his leads are completely off the wall. I know he's a really good guitar player, but the tone is just like, no. So that's my number 5. Our number 4 is a guy synonymous with amazing tone, but not on this album, I think. I'm going to go with the Black Sabbath Never Say Die album. Guitar tone on that album sucks. It's fucking Tony Iommi, the god of metal. And it's an absolute awful guitar tone. In general, that album doesn't sound good. And I do like that album. I like the songs. Even though it's a weird poppy kind of thing they were doing, and they basically hated each other at that point. I like a bunch of the songs on that album, but the guitar, I was like, this is a bad guitar. Like, somebody had the mic pointed the wrong direction or something. So that's my number 4. Number 3.
Tony's tone is as sucky as the album is.
Yeah. Well, I like the album.
That's me.
I like the song Never Say Die. I know Chris Allen's favorite.
That's a good song. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Chris Allen and I both hate that album. Yeah.
And there's a couple of, I'd rather listen to that than some other things. But so number 3, I'm going to go with Metallica, Saint Anger. And that album I really like. I mean, I think that whole album is wrong in every way. That stupid snare drum sound. But like even the guitar tones are like, first of all, guys, tune back up. You tune down to like Z flat. It's too low. It sounds like they're trying to be Helmet or something. And I just like, what are they doing? And then that snare drum sound, of course, is legendarily bad. But I also picked Justice for All because there's no bass to support it. So there's like no bass guitar. It sounds like an album with just like, hey, we got guitars. And like they took the bass, the bass is mixed out.
Who cares about that?
It doesn't work, I care about that because the bass makes the guitar sound better,
Pshaw.
It's a supporting role. Number 2, I think I could go with this across every album because I really don't like the band and their guitar album. Their guitar sound is especially bad. Chris Allen's going to hate me for this, but I'm going with any album, especially the early albums by Venom. Welcome to Hell, Black Metal. I mean, did anyone get the memo that Venom was supposed to be like a joke? It's apparently not. And everyone kind of kept buying into it. I'm like, nobody's getting the fact that they're like putting us on, but it turned into a real thing. But good grief, the sound on Welcome to Hell is so awful. It can't even be calculated.
I agree with you on that. Great songs though. Well, at least I think so. But yeah, that Mantis' guitar tone is not good.
There's no tone on that album at all. The
Yeah,
bass
you're probably
drum,
right. Yeah.
it's just, I guess that's what black metal kind of, focused on, because they kept going more extreme with Bad, and the real extreme black metal bands just used a boombox and recorded horribly, and that's cool if that's your thing. I don't want to listen to it. Anyway, my number one would be, and this is a band I love, and with guitar tones I love a lot of the time, is Kiss Hotter Than Hell. I mean, that album is recorded horribly. It sounds like they put the mics in the bathroom and just let the band play and recorded that. It's like, guys, the baffles, don't put them between the mic and the amp. Put them behind the microphone. Everything's just like, I don't know what's going on. Everything's out of phase. The weirdest sounding. And I love that album and the songs. I love the solo on Strange Ways. Ace does an amazing solo, but the guitar tone is just god awful. So, but I like it on Dress to Kill. I like it on the first album. I like it on Destroyer. All their other, classic records. That album, something went horribly awry, and I don't know what happened. But so that's my number one, and I'm going to give you my honorable mention because I can't talk shit about other guitar players' sounds without mentioning my first album, the debut Hitman album. It was a fucking horrible guitar sound. And I thought we had a great sound when we were recording it, but low budget, not really knowing what I'm doing, being 22. I still have the amp I recorded it with. It's a great amp, the 77 Marshall JMP 50 watt, amazing amp. But somewhere between setting the amp and recording the amp and mixing it, it came out pretty bad, and I can't stand it to this day. So those are my 5 with the runner-up. So.
I like a little black metal analogy. Somewhere Nick Franco is awfully upset.
That's okay.
All right. My number 5, Vernon Reed. Good player, really different, unique player. Man, those first 2 albums sound awful. His tone is just it's just brittle and wonky, and I don't get it. I don't get it.
I thought of him too.
Yeah,
great guitar player though. Interesting.
Yeah.
Awesome.
God, these. I mean, all 5 of my guys and that are going to be in my least favorite tone category are amazing players, and a couple of them are like more than amazing players. Especially my number 4. This is probably going to upset a lot of people. I love him to death. But Alan Holdsworth's tone was never good, especially on most of his solo records.
Ooh.
When he
had a great clean tone.
Huh?
His clean tone was brilliant.
Yeah, not
You didn't like his clean tone?
On some albums, not too bad. On others, not good at all.
Not on the first UK album?
Well, I said most of his solo. I don't like it.
Okay.
He sounds great on the UK album. I think he sounds great on the Soft Machine album. I think he sounds great with Gong. I think he sounds great with Tony Williams' Lifetime. But like,
wow,
Mental Fatigue and a couple of those other early. His playing is amazing. I just never thought his tone sounded, and even worse so on some of the later albums. Great playing.
Yeah.
Amazing playing. His tone just never did it for me on his solo stuff.
Yeah, he went away from like that, I want to say martially, like, a hard rock kind of tone where he was trying to be fusion guy with these fusion different 80s tones. And I totally get what you're saying. I never disliked it though, but I get what you're saying though.
He was using a little more overdrive and distortion early on, and
then
then I think it's almost like once he discovered like the syntax, that turned him into a completely different player.
Yep.
He started using different amps, Yamahas and Hughes and Kettner amps, and then I don't know, all this he had this really nasally tone later on in his career, and even a little bit in the early solo albums in the early 80s. But I find that easier to listen to. And the thing is, I like the songs, I like the playing, but if we're talking like, do I get like these warm and fuzzies listening to his tone? Not really.
No, true.
The player himself, absolutely. I mean, he's one of the best. He's one of my favorites. It's kind of the same thing for my next guy, Frank Zappa. Great player. Tone, not very good. Not very good. I don't know. You know, it's like it's almost like him and Holdsworth both really trying to emulate horn players with their tone.
Yes.
And that's all fine and dandy. And maybe it's kind of original, but from a guitarist perspective, I can't remember how many times I've listened to like a Zappa solo and said, wow, that tone just slayed me. The solo itself may slay me, but the tone, not digging it.
Got his wah-wah pedal right in the middle.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, that sort of cocked wah thing.
Yep.
A lot of the time.
Which is okay, because there's a lot of players that do that and maybe do it a little bit better but for me, it just, again, sound really wonky and squonky. Like he's trying to emulate a horn, which I get it is different. And I'm not trying to, I love these guys, but we're talking pure tone here. His tone never excited me much. My number 2, Joe Perry.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
I mean, cool player, good riffs, but his tone doesn't excite me on any of those albums.
Not even Toys in the Attic? I think that's...
I mean, a little bit here and there, but I mean, would I qualify that or even Rocks? Or those 70s albums are great, but to me, none of his tones on any of those albums makes my hair stand up on the back of my...
Right, you don't tone chase Joe Perry.
No, not at all. The guys we're going to talk about in just a minute, those are guys who, really get you excited. These guys may get you, the leads and the riffs may be awesome, but, I don't know. And my number 1, Butch has already mentioned, Steve Howe. Love him.
What?
And you know what? I'm more picking on him here for his live tone. I've seen Yes live like 15 times. His tone is awful live. And I don't know whether it's just because he's been using line 6 stuff for like quite a few years now. I can listen to the old live stuff, or I think his tone is okay on Close to the Edge and Relayer. It's still not amazing. The playing is amazing, but man, just not good. And if you listen to his tone on all these more modern Yes records, it's just awful. It's thin, it's nasally, no balls to it whatsoever. And live, it's just worse. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen Yes live, and I'm up there watching him, and I'm like, Jesus, Steve, what are you doing?
Like, I just think of the old tone. It's like, did anyone ever tell me that he could use a pedal? That's what it sounds. It sounds like he's just taking the jazz box and plugging it directly straight in, and whatever comes out of the amp, I'll just have to make that work.
Yeah.
What amp was he using back in the day? Was he using like a Fender or something? Because
I would assume. I don't know.
it's definitely not a Marshall.
No,
he definitely was not using Marshalls yet.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe a Fender or Roland Jazz.
He's been using line 6 now for a long time.
Yeah, that's going to.
He's using those Gibson ES 175s.
Right.
Through a line 6. Occasionally he'll play like a Telly or a Strat live, but that's mostly what he's using.
But and saving him a little bit, that's one of the things to me that makes him such a phenomenal guitar player. He has such an awful tone to work from, and he still was able to do all these great things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's harder to play clean.
That's what I'm saying.
He played very clean, and man, that guy, he was all over. I mean, he was really technical, and really, he did everything really well. I like the guitar sound on South Side of the Sky, probably because it's the crunchiest thing I've ever heard him do. And it's really honky and weird and nasally, but it fits the song, and because you got Chris Squire in there. But yeah, in general, it's just like a hollow body through some super clean amp with not even reverb on it. It's just it's
nothing.
It's naked.
Worse is like, you go see them in more recent years, and he's up there playing, Loner Over Lonely Heart, which of course you had, what's his face?
Trevor Rabin.
Trevor Rabin playing on the album, and that's a pretty crazy solo. Yeah. And then you got Steve up there doing this little thing with like there's no distortion on it, no overdrive, no nothing, and it's just like, it just does not fit. It just does not compute.
Please hit the pedal once, please.
Just do it. Just make us happy, please. Just for once. There is this thing called distortion box. They're cheap. They're
overdrive, something, reverb. A delay, something.
All right, Butch,
boy.
back to you for your favorites now. Here we go. We're gonna switch gears.
All right. You want? Are we doing honorable mentions at all, or no?
Yeah.
Throw a couple out at the end. Yeah, when you're done.
At the end of it, okay. Well, this is actually very easy for me. It's just a matter of who to put in the 5 because I always have a group that's always there. I'm going to cheat because I have to because I won't be able to live with myself if I don't. So I'm sorry, but we're just gonna put this here and just say this was the start of the revolution of everything of our generation. So Edward, 78. Everyone's been tone chasing this for, since 78. So I'm just going to say that. I'm not actually going to include it, but we're just going to say. So this is where it starts for me. So 5, Stryper,
Wow.
Soldiers Under Command, Mesa Boogie, Furman PQ3 EQ in the front of it, an ungodly tone in 1985 when I heard this is like, wow.
I agree with that.
And I've become friends with Michael Sweet, and every time we end up talking, we're talking about that tone. And he's a big tone guy and is still chasing stuff. And I'm telling you that tone is just, I love it to this day. That's one of those tones that gives me goosebumps every time I hear it. It's just different. I like different. I don't like we were talking about Steve Howe. I don't like tones that, not that I don't like it, but I'm not after the tones where you just plug in and that's it. I like a tone where you have a great bass and then you customize it to you. You build around it with EQs or whatever you use, a modified amp, whatever, and you make it unique. So all my tones are going to be unique. For Akira Takasaki, 1986 for this one. Good Lord. He has such an incredible tone. And a lot of his tone, I mean, it's the amp, obviously, too, but he has such a pick attack that you can hear him digging in. His tone is so distinguishable. Oh, my goodness, Lord. Now we're getting crazy because this guy, Ronnie Leticrow from TNT, this tone, I remember the first time I heard this in 1984, being like, what the fuck is this guy doing? The tone and then the way he picks, the machine gun picking technique that he does, combined with that really different, very mid-rangey tone. Oh my God. I always have my music on shuffle, and anytime something comes on from him, especially from this record, I do giggle to this day. His tone is so righteous. It's just, good Lord. And again, very unique. No one sounds like him. Phenomenal. Number 2 is a band that I have talked about since the day I found this record in 1984. Icon.
Wow.
If you guys have never heard, especially the first 2 records, but this is the debut record from Icon, 1984, self-titled. I don't even know what this is literally, as far as I'm concerned, probably the second greatest guitar tone ever recorded. A masterpiece of an album, still completely underground, but anyone that knows this record is shaking their head right now. Is like, yeah, that's a badass tone.
What's the players again on that?
Dan Wexler and John Aquilino.
Yep.
Just, again, a tone that you hear. I mean, it sounds, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way at all. It sounds very 80s. It is a complete processed kind of tone, but not processed like late 80s where it was all the rack gear and making everything sound tinny. Their tone is just, I don't know. I've loved that tone forever.
Who produced that record?
Mike Varney.
Mike Varney. Well, there you go.
Yep.
That makes sense.
But it's a tone. The only I can say, a lot of people know the Stryper record. The Stryper was doing the same type of thing that Icon was doing tone-wise in California, and these guys were doing it in Arizona. And their album came, I guess Stryper's EP came out in 83 or 84, so around the same time as the first Icon, which is 84. They're not the same, but they were going towards the same type of tone, but it's still very different. But brilliant. And Pete knows what's number one, because this is the greatest guitar tone for me of all time. Brad Gillis on Ozzy Speak of the Devil, suck it, Chris Allo, I don't care what you say. This is the greatest guitar tone for me. It is fat, it's thick. Oh my God. If I'm playing guitar and tone's bothering me and I'm trying to do something and whatever's going on is bothering. If I list, that's my reference point. I listen to that to get my head clean, to get back to the tone that I love so much. When I was fortunate enough to finally meet him and become friendly with Gillis in 2016, that was one of the things I told him. It's like, dude, Speak of the Devil, my favorite guitar tone of all time. He immediately is like, oh, I'll tell you right now how I got that. He just ran down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, exactly how he did, exact settings, everything. And that's a live tone, so there's no faking it. I have the bootleg shows from the Ritz that was recorded at, the same exact guitar tone. So it was not doctored for the album. It's the same tone. That tone is just outerworldly for me. There is no question that that's my number one. Brad Gillis, Speak of the Devil, Ozzy Osbourne, 1982.
Cool.
So all my picks were from the 80s. and not past 85. Yeah, not past 85.
So who mixed that album? And
Max
who,
Norman.
well, let's not leave him out of the equation, because almost a lot of his records have amazing guitar tones. He's
all of them.
One of the and a lot of it has to do with
Ozzy.
that. Yeah, the first Ozzy. They were that's what happens when you put a distortion, MXR distortion plus in front of a Marshall. It goes like this
with Altec speakers, really bright.
Yeah, right. So, but yeah.
Although we all love Diary of a Madman, though the Diary tone was completely different.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just say that, way different than the first one.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there you go. Oh, honorable mention. So I'll go quick. I just wrote down 5. There's a ton. But Rich Ward from Stuck Mojo, who's in Fozzy now, but in Stuck Mojo, one of the greatest guitar tones, metal guitar tones ever. George Lynch, who's made a career of tone, phenomenal. Warren DeMartini in the early Rat days from 84 to 88, 89, phenomenal tone. I'm going to be really specific. Judas Priest from 1978 and 1979. So Stained Class, Hellbent, Unleashed in the East. Those 3 albums, the greatest guitar tone Priest has ever had. I don't know why they didn't continue to use it. Great tone. And of course, I have to mention John Sykes. So John Sykes on the Whitesnake album, and even more so on the first Blue Murder record. So everyone's got to drink John Sykes. So there you go.
I'll drink to John Sykes.
I got nothing.
There you go.
All right, Chris, what do you got?
All right. I did a different kind of list entirely. I don't have top 5 guys. Well, one guy's on there. But I kind of categorized my tones into things that I like, because I was like, oh, I like this, and I started comparing stuff, and a lot of the stuff I liked was exactly the same. And I'm like, okay, let me sort of get 5 basic things and give some examples, and so let's roll. I know we got a short time tonight. So my number one, and this is in no order. This is how I listed them, but number 1, I like guys who play with a little bit of modulation going on all the time. Like say, like Empire, the Queensryche album, Pat Travers, Go For What You Know. The whole time they've got those little roto sound. I don't even know what those things were that they bought. They both went out and got them. They both used them, left them on
Leslie.
time.
He used a Leslie.
That's what they were using? I thought they had some kind of simulator.
This is 78, 79. He had a fucking Leslie speaker on stage.
Yeah.
Hey, all right. If you can lift it, use it.
Yep, exactly.
So, something distorted with just a slight modulation going on, keeping it interesting. Number 2, I really liked early thrash. When I first heard it, I had never heard tones like that. You know, the entire Ride the Lightning album, for me, that's the first Metallica album I ever heard, and that was just like, whoa. You know, so tight bottom end, you know, just chunky, takes every freaking pick attack, you know, every pick sound you make gets pulled through. Something like that. Also, the song Death Squad by Sacred Reich. Not like Creeping Death, but that kind of early, you know, thick, sort of scooped out thrash tone. You know, and there's a whole bunch of albums that sound a lot like that from that era. But when I first heard that, it blew my mind. Number 3, you know, like Butch said, 78, the first Van Halen album. You know, you can't deny that. You know, there's nothing I could say that hasn't already been said, but boy, when you hear that, you're just like, yeah, you know, I like that.
You know what it is?
That's an off the list because it goes without say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
There's,
true.
for guitar playing
on the list.
For guitar playing of our generation, there's before that and there's after that.
Exactly.
Agreed.
Yep.
No doubt. Moving on. I like the sound of a humbucker guitar played through a Marshall amp, like everybody. But, you know, in my life, you know, the first time I heard some of that stuff was, you know, Mutt Lange getting together with AC/DC and Def Leppard, you know, from Highway to Hell on through Pyromania, you know, that sort of sound. And you know, it's copied by just about everybody right around then that wanted to make a heavy hit record. But definitely, that's my next one. And then my last one, and I haven't really mentioned equipment, but this one, I know 2 guys and what they use. And it's that sound where a guy's playing and, you know, and it sounds like, you know, he's not making the notes happen. Like all the music's in the guitar and he's holding it back and letting it out. You know, it's like, all right, I'm going to just let these sounds out. I'm barely controlling this. And like Marcus King and Derek Trucks, both these guys, I know they use like dimed out Fender Super Reverbs, which apparently are just monster amps when they're turned all the way up. Although Derek doesn't use them anymore, who got stolen. But yeah, I guess Marcus King isn't big enough yet to actually turn his up when he's playing live. So, but yeah, that's what I got. I didn't have any honorable mentions because you could lump, you know, pretty much anything else I like into one of those 5. So
It's true. Yeah. Cool. Interesting way of doing it. I like that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's a cool way of doing it.
Yeah. All right, Hack.
All right, so I went by record again, and you know, generally for me, you know, and it's common all of these is like I like tone where the character of the guitar, you hear the character of the guitar, you can hear all the individual notes. There's great clarity, there's drive, there's bottom. That's kind of the sort of the, you know, what I'm always kind of looking for, and all these have that in common. First one I'm going to go with, my number 5 is and this one they only did one record, talking about the Sex Pistols, Steve Jones on Nevermind the Bullocks. Great guitar tone, man. At the time, I think he was using a Fender Twin. I think he was using a Gibson Custom. Just that whole record, just the sound of his guitar. I mean, listen to Anarchy in the UK. I mean, it's just I love it. I love it. Number 4, I got to go with my buddy Nuno. 3 sides, every story.
Yep.
I mean, you know, you've got that rich, fat sound, but you still hear every note. And just I mean, when he lets stuff ring out, the sustain, I call it the throb, you know, that sound after they hit the guitar and you just kind of feel that being said, though, apparently somebody I was looking it up, you know, he was using Marshalls, but somebody was saying he's using Galleon Krugers on that. So I don't know how he achieved it, but
he wasn't using ADAs on that.
I don't know. You know,
I can find out.
I
know the producer, so
I always thought he was still using the ADA MP1 with a Macintosh power amp.
I don't know, man. You know, I looked it up. I looked up a lot of these guys, and everybody had a different, you know, everybody had a different rig, but that tone on that record is just stellar.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so number 3. So I mentioned him, and everybody's hair went up. Now I'm going to mention him again, but in a positive light. Billy Gibbons, ZZ Top first album.
Oh yeah.
What I love about that is that sounds like a guy playing a Les Paul into a Marshall, zero effects.
Yep.
Talk about minimalism. That was all in his hands. I mean, you listen to Brown Sugar.
Brown Sugar.
My God, that is insane what that guy can do. It's just incredible sound with no frills, just straight pure tone. That's one of the best examples of just, again, straight pure tone, no frills.
And the 59 Les Paul.
Yeah, well, Billy Gates, right?
Yes, sir.
Number two, this is, I love, somebody was mentioning Marshalls, Gibson Les Pauls into a Marshall. Some of the best Les Paul into a Marshall sound. And these guys, that's all they use. I'm talking about the Hawkins brothers, the band Darkness, Last of Our Kind, that record, which is 2 records ago. The rhythm tone on that. I mean, you've got that bitey, angry Les Paul, just crunch. It's just, maybe it was the way that was recorded. I don't know, but I absolutely love the sound of those guitars on that record. Just fantastic. So my number one is not, if you took these tones and isolate them, they wouldn't sound very good. But my number one is based on a guy who's an absolute master at tailoring his sound to whatever song he's doing. Like, I'm talking where if you heard the same song played without that tailored tone, it wouldn't work as nearly as well. And I'm talking about the absolute master, Jimmy Page. Physical Graffiti. If you listen to that record, all his tones are just dialed in for those specific songs, and they just make those songs absolutely shine. I'll give you some examples. Listen to The Rover, listen to Houses of the Holy, Kashmir, the solo tone he gets on 10 Years Gone. Holy shit. That's a fantastic solo, but he's got that Leslie thing going. He just knows how to shape the tone for the song they're doing. So my number one is Jimmy Page.
Doesn't hurt that he produced
I'll
it.
agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite Zeppelin song. So I'll agree with that wholeheartedly. It's a great one.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, he's a producer, so he can see the whole picture. He's not just, I'm going to get a good sound. It's like, no, I'm not just going to get a good sound. I'm going to get a sound that's going to absolutely shine in this track. And he does that consistently.
And I'm Jimmy Page. I can do whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah. Especially cool is you could tell in the bridge of that song. Is that song? Yeah. You could tell he's using that Dan Electro for that big chord. It's kind of clean and sort of dirty. You could tell he layered a Dan Electro in there, and it's super cool. I love that song and that album. But yeah, he uses different guitar tones for each song, and they all are specific to those songs. Yeah,
And Hack. I was just gonna say, Hack, like you were saying before.
Yeah.
The thing about Page is like he's one of those guys specifically that you can hear that he's using a different guitar on different songs, or in the same song that he's using 2 or 3 different guitars, because you can physically hear the difference tone-wise of each guitar.
His rhythm, like you listen to his rhythm and you listen to his lead.
Yeah.
A different amp, a different sound. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? He's literally sculpting as he's going through. I mean, listen to Carousel Amber when that heavy guitar comes in. I mean, his sounds are perfect. I mean, they're perfect. You know what I mean? The guy's just an absolute master. Absolute master.
I agree.
Notable mentions. I got I mean, the Back in Black guitar sound, AC/DC. Everybody's chasing that sound.
Great tone.
I mean, it's just that record specifically. I mean, everybody and their nephew is looking for that. That's just absolute classic too. That could have been on here. You mentioned the Van Halen first record. There's another one everybody's chasing. And another honorable mention is, I know Pete said Joe Perry, but I think Joe Perry and Brad Whitford on Toys in the Attic specifically is some of the best sounding guitars I've heard. But there you go. Those are that's my list of my mentions.
Great 70s tones. I agree.
Cool. All right, Jim.
All right. So again, I went albums and sometimes song specific because I think because a lot of these guitar players have had decades of putting out records and their tones change, but these songs kind of make me specifically listen to that song or album because I look forward to the guitar sound so much. So that's kind of how I went with this. And then there are guys that just overall have great tones throughout. But number 5, I'm going to go with, I love the sound on the song specifically, but the album too, Thin Lizzy Jailbreak. I love the guitar sound on that song. It's just dry. It's in your face.
Tight.
It's tight. You can hear, it's just, I don't know, it's just such a cool sound. And it's a Les Paul through a Marshall, but not a typical Les Paul through a Marshall. Yeah. It's just got a great, very interesting. They're tuned down on that song. I think half a step.
Half step.
Kind of grungy before grunge. It's a little.
Take that back.
Super defined. It is.
Take it back.
I'm not taking it back. I'm not. It's grungy. It's a little bit grungy. It's not as tight as a metal sound as they would get later. It's dirty and cool in a good way. So.
Were they still playing the deluxes at that point, or were they playing standards? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
I think that they were playing deluxes still. That's early.
76. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just love the sound on that record, specifically the like rhythm chords on that song Jailbreak. It's just so cool.
I'll take that.
Yeah. So I knew you would. Number 4, I'm going to go with, and it's specific to this album because they repeated it and that became their sound. But the guitar sound on the first Boston album, I just love.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, especially the solos, because they play so damn well, and the way they dig into those solos, and just the way they execute them, just incredible. And that weird thing that he invented, there's only 2 of them that does the spaceship noises, and I was like, that's just a genius all across the board, everything. But I love that guitar sound, and then the second and third were good, but not as good as that.
Not as good. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my number 4. Number 3 is a band that's very outside, mostly outside of the Sea of Tranquility thing, but this album makes me want to listen to it for the guitar sound specifically and the songs. But I love the guitar sound. It's a power pop band from the 90s called the Posies, and the album is called Frosting on the Beater. Sort of a power pop band with a grungy guitar sound, but a very cool, unique. The producer, Don Fleming, we actually met with him in my band about doing a record, and we had a whole discussion about these weird, fucked up, huge, cool guitar sounds, Supro amps, and I don't know what they use. They use weird tunings, but when I listen to that album, I specifically focus on the guitar sound. So that's my number 3.
Hey, Jim, the Posies?
The Posies.
Okay.
There's a power pop band from Seattle from the 90s. 2 singers. They're great harmonies.
I love power pop.
You do?
I do.
Okay, so the Posies, Frosting on the Beater. It's this big, weird, fucked up, cool guitar sound.
Okay.
I can't really describe it to you other than it's really cool. Well recorded. So yeah. And my number 2 is going to be Judas Priest Firepower. I love when I heard that, and we were doing in the midst of doing the last Hitman album, and I'm like, fuck, if I could get that guitar sound on this album. And we sent it to the mixer, Bob St. John, who did all the Extreme records. That's why I could find out what Nuno used on those records by asking him. I was like, can you just make it sound like that? There's like, there's no way. I mean, it's like I don't know what kind of voodoo they were doing.
Andy Sneap.
Yeah, that's the
Andy Sneap. Amps. If it's both, the guitar sound on that album is fucking unbelievable.
Great.
And it helps that the songs are great and Richie's a great player, but that tone is just like fucking it and I love the 78, 79, like you said, those Priest records, because it's right before everything became too overblown and processed. I like the Screaming for Vengeance and Defenders of the Faith records, but there's a lot of chorusy, processed, weird stuff going on, kind of mushy. I prefer the, you know, the kind of just British valve sound of those 78, 79 Priest records. So that's you know, I love those too, but Firepower is just like modern and amazing.
Yeah.
So that's my number 2. My number 1, and I could pick a bunch of albums from the 70s from this, but I always kind of defer back to Hemispheres by Rush for because I listened to that album specifically to hear the very big first
The
Alex
chord.
Lyston, the Alex Lyston chord with, you know, the chorus and the high watt amps. He just switched to high watts. I listened to that album and that song specifically just to hear that. Wow, it's just, you know, perfect.
I talked about that yesterday.
Yeah, it's like, so how great is that, you know? So yeah, that's my number 1. But I love the sound of the first album too, because they had no budget. It was
Raw.
35 and a plexi and nothing else, and just Alex, and that guitar tone is monstrous
Yes.
for an 8-track recording. So I'm going to give that my runner-up for my number 1. So
Hemisphere tone is badass, man.
from the fucking heavens. You know?
That chorus, oh man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rolling Space Echo.
Electric Mistress and a Rolling Space Echo. Yeah.
Jim, you got any honorables for I finish this off?
Yeah, I'll go honorables. I'll go off a couple of overall tones I absolutely love. Frampton's tone, especially live in the later period, you know, the last 10 years, and on Frampton Comes Alive. Just you see him live, and that guitar tone is fucking monstrous and amazing, and he's so great. I think overall, the Scorpions have always had a great guitar sound.
Yeah.
Love Drive specifically, but any Scorpions record pretty much has an amazing guitar tone. AC/DC, Power Age, Highway to Hell. You know, if you want to test your Marshall, your 70s Marshall amp, play Highway to Hell. If it sounds like the record, the amp, it sounds right. Thunder in the East, loudness. Again, Van Halen 1 is a go without say, but I'm going to say it anyway. And yeah, those are my runner-ups. So.
Cool.
I quickly got to throw in Billy Duffy from the Carlton list.
Which album?
Which album? They changed that guitar tone, changed a lot.
They're all good.
Sonic Temple had a great tone.
Yes.
Electric too.
Very different
both
though.
great.
Completely different. Yeah.
Dials it in differently, and yeah, but they're all great.
Cool. And we got some good picks tonight. All right, my number 5. My number 5 changed this list so many times. I like so many of these guys, and I love so many of these tones, but I just could not leave Gary Moore out of my top 5. Whether he's doing the hard rock stuff or the fusion stuff in the 70s or the blues stuff, man, his tone just kills me. Whether he's playing that Charvel or that Strat or that Les Paul through a Marshall, man, those notes just sing, they scream. Had to pick them. Love them.
I forgot to mention the Back on the Street solo when I was talking about the modulated sounds and whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry to jump in on you.
Great stuff. No, it's okay. Yeah, great stuff. So many classic moments from this guy. Just man. My number 4, had to throw John Sykes on here. If nothing else, for that monstrous Whitesnake album, because that is one of the best tones ever on any album, in my opinion. But man, he sounds great on the Thin Lizzy album. He sounds amazing on that first Blue Murder album. Unfortunately, we haven't heard a hell of a lot from him since then, but even for the one album, he's got to be on my list because, man, just so great. There's something to be said about a Les Paul custom through a Marshall, right? I mean, it doesn't get much more basic than that.
Yep.
And he could step on the wah wah all he wants, when he wants, and it works out just fine. He doesn't overdo it. Yeah. Great stuff. My number 3, Warren Haynes. I mean, whether he's playing a Les Paul or a Firebird or a 335, and occasionally pulls out a Strat, his tone is always so sweet, whether it's a bluesy, jazzy piece or more hard rock and stuff, whether he's going for a 70s vibe or, you know, something that's pretty current. Man, this guy, and I think he uses Soldanos, if I'm not mistaken, and just
He's
And a
got a
Diaz.
bunch of PRS custom made stuff now too.
Yeah, that's right. He does use the PRSs too. But no matter what he uses,
Yeah.
it just always sounds so good. And I'm going back to his Allman Brothers days in the beginning, through to the latter period Allman Brothers stuff, and all the. I mean, he's gone through all these different kind of styles in Government Mule over the years, but it's all great. And even his solo stuff, which is really kind of rootsy and bluesy, still really, really sweet tone. My number 2 guy, not when he plays Ovations, but when he plugs his Les Paul or his PRS into a Mesa Boogie or a Marshall, Al Di Meola slays me every time.
Wow.
So good, man. Just whether he's burning it up or playing some kind of Latin samba, the guy is just spectacular. And I just, again, those notes just like sing to me. And that's what it's all about. And my number 1 guy, well, I don't know if he's my number 1 guy. He's one of my favorites here. I tried to pick some different stuff than everybody else did, but this guy is amazing. When he was a teenager, he was amazing. At like almost 70 years old, he's amazing right now. Whether he was doing it in Santana or in Journey, Neil Schon is amazing. And I'm giving him a lot of props because I think live, his tone is killer. I mean, when he's playing a riff, it's big and beefy and ballsy. When he's playing a solo, whether it's really melodic and slow or shredding, you hear every single note, and every single note is absolutely perfect and matches the song. There's never a wasted anything, and you feel the emotion in everything he does. Whether he's playing 100 miles an hour or just a couple notes, you know it's Neil.
Yes, you do.
Now, let me ask you, is that tone or is it execution or is it both?
I think it's both. It's gotta be.
Has to be both.
He's got refrigerators full of stuff. He talk about a process guy, but it sounds like Neil though.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is his hands and obviously good gear, but you put someone else on that gear and that guy just has amazing hands. So,
exactly like Pete just said. No one sounds like him.
Yeah.
I mean, you ever see any of these videos that he does like in his office? He was doing them all throughout the pandemic. No matter what he's playing, every single video, the tone is exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly.
I would watch those every day, and he's just sitting there, and he's just going off. I'm like, jeez, there's Neil. I can put a blindfold over my eyes. I'm like, oh, that's Neil playing.
Absolutely.
Some of my other honorables here, Tom Schultz was mentioned, VH was mentioned, Billy Gibbons was mentioned, David Gilmour, had to include him. Ian Crichton from Saga.
Yeah.
That cat has, right? Martin Barr from Jethro Tull. Joe Bonamassa, I love his tone. I know some people don't like him. I love him. And Mark Tremonti from Alter Bridge.
I haven't jumped on that train.
He's monster tone. Peter Green and Steve Lukather. And Carlos Santana. Another honorable mention there for me. But
you left out a guy. I guess you're number 1 guy. You're not really don't dig his tone all that much.
I love Blackmore to death. He doesn't have spectacular tone, I don't think.
No, it's twangy.
Yeah, Iommi's my number 2 guy, and he has great tone on some albums.
Right.
Really crap, but that's more. I don't know if that's more of the production and all that kind of stuff.
Dio era.
Yeah. You know?
Michael Schenker has great lead tone, not always great rhythm tone.
Correct.
Well, that's Ron Nevison. I meant to mention him in my negative side that just that pig nose thing that Ron Nevison did with UFI. I'll never understand.
Yeah.
It's like
But the leads are great.
Yeah, the leads are
The
phenomenal.
lead sounds are amazing. Yeah, because he uses the wah-wah halfway, and he does it, again, hands.
Yep.
So,
I love Ace's solo tone, but yeah, some of the rhythm stuff on some of those records is kind of rough.
yeah, again, great hands.
Yeah.
He's just playing a Les Paul through a Marshall.
Yeah, he's got
4
great.
different people with that setup would sound nowhere near as good as Ace.
Yeah.
'Cause, back when he was good in the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
he had great feel, great phrasing. He knew how to execute, and then he got fucked up, and then that was that. But
Yeah.
back then, awesome,
Mm-hmm.
no doubt.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, for everybody watching, in the comments below, please list some of your favorite tones, some of your favorite players, and your least favorites as well. Let's get a little bit of everything. So I want to thank the gang here for doing some homework and coming up with some cool lists. We got a lot of good examples here tonight, both good and bad. But I think for the most part, even the bad ones, we like these players. We just don't love their tones. So So I want to thanks everybody for watching. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. It's Tuesday night. Also coming up in just a little while, we've got In the Prague Seat. So for Chris Canzoneri, Butch Jones, Guitar Hack, and Jim Bacchi, I am Pete Pardo. See you all next month with another episode of the Guitarist Corner. Take care, everybody.
Cheers.